were left to fend for themselves.
Jerome, how old are you?
9.
9? Do you go to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school, Jerome?
At the Okeechobee Elementary School.
I see. What is your sister's name?
Lois.
That's Lois. And what are your other sisters' names?
Catherine and Beulah.
Catherine and Beulah. What happened to your foot, Jerome?
Dig a nail in out there by the wash house.
So you drove a nail in out by the wash house. What did your mother do for that?
With some alcohol on it.
Where do you sleep, Jerome?
In his bed.
You have this big bed?
Yes.
What happened? How did you get that hole in that bed there, Jerome?
The rats.
The what?
Rats.
Now, Jerome, you are taking care of Kathy, of Beulah, and Lois.
Yes.
Now, are you going to give them lunch today?
Yes.
What are you going to feed them?
I don't know.
Do you have any food here to give them?
Yes.
I see. What time does your mother come home?
I don't know.
The following day, Eileen King, the mother of Jerome, Kathy, Lois, and Beulah, again was picking beans.
Eileen King, I saw your children yesterday at the Okeechobee camp. Why didn't you put them in the nursery?
I don't make enough to pay for it.
How much does it cost to put them in?
85 cents.
85 cents.
That's right.
Eileen, what time did you come out the field this morning?
6 o'clock.
What time would you get home?
About 3:30, 4 o'clock.
6 this morning to 4 o'clock this afternoon.
That's right.
How much did you earn?
$1.
$1?
That's right. $1.
Is that because the beans were of poor quality?
That's right.
Has this happened before?
That's right.
How much will your food cost you today?
About $2.
Aileen, how old are you?
29.
How many children do you have?
14.
How old were you when you first started working in the fields?
8.
You've been working 21 years in the field?
That's right.
Aileen, do you ever think...
I often forget about this part of the slave trade, the part that started in Africa. Getting captured from your village, being barefoot, naked, and chained, walking for hundreds of miles with almost no food, the last bath, the horrors of the slave dungeon, the ships. When I imagine their suffering, it hurts me to my core. For a span of 400 years, our ancestors endured hell. We honor those who died and give thanks to those who survived so we might live.
Legacy News.
Tell you the truth, when I think of it today, I don't know how I'm living.
I remember that just as well. Look like to me, I can.
Been slaves all our lives, and mother was a slave, sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They know nothing about reading right. All that I know, they teach you to mind your master and your mistress. Mom and them didn't know where to go. You see, after freedom go, just like he turned something out, you know, didn't know where to go.
My name is Fountain Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. My grandfather was 115 years old when he died. And now I am 101 years old. Some people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. You all slept on the floor. Sat up here, sat up there. Just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't like to look at no book.
Harriet Smith, remembering what she saw as a small girl during the final days of the Civil War.
We stood on that picket fence all day long, seeing them soldiers going back to Silent Zone and different places. Colored soldiers in droves. That's right long. Of course, I remember all our white folks, and all the names of them, all the children. Call every one of the children's names.
Who did you belong to?
Jim Bunton, the baby boy.
The results of these digitally enhanced recordings are arresting, almost unbelievable. The idea of hearing the voices of actual slaves from the plantations of the Old South is as powerful, as startling really, as if you could hear Abraham Lincoln or Robert E. Lee speak. Listen again to Fountain Hughes, who was born in 1848.
We were slaves. We belonged to people. They sell us like they sell horses and cows and hogs and all like that. Have an auction bench, and they put you up on the bench and bid on you, the same as bidding on cattle, you know.
Here is 91-year-old Texan Laura Smalley talking in the 1940s about the outcome of a tussle between two women, one black, one white, one slave, one mistress. The mistress tried to slap the slave, but the black woman pushed her into a chair. Laura Smalley was a girl at the time, but she remembers vividly what happened to the black woman when the master came home.
Well, they taken that old woman, poor old woman, carried in the peach orchard and whipped her. And, just tied her hand this way, around the peach orchard tree. I remember that just as well, looked like to me, I can, and round the tree, and whipped her. And well, she couldn't do nothing but just kick her feet, just kick her feet. But it just had her clothes off down to her waist, Just didn't have her plumb naked, but they had her clothes down to her waist. And every now and then they'd whip her, and then snuff the pipe out on her, snuff the pipe out on her. The embers in the pipe, where you ever see the pipe smoking.
Blow them out on her?
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord. Mm-hmm.
The plantation on which Smalley was a slave sounds brutal. She recalls scrambling with other children for food from a huge wooden tray, like a hog trough.
All of them, would get around that tray with spoons and eat, sit like mush or soup or something like that. And all them children get around there and just eat.
Fountain Hughes tells his interviewer about the relentless round of work for him on a Virginia plantation.
Night never comes out. You have nothing to do. Time to cut tobacco. If they want you to cut all night long out in the field, you cut. And if they want you to hang all night long, you hang tobacco. It didn't matter about your tired, being tired, you're afraid to say you're tired.
It was cotton, not tobacco, that solidified slavery, though. The invention of the cotton gin at the end of the 18th century made its processing easy, but the crop still needed enormous amounts of unskilled labor. Control of the slave and his labor through laws and regulations became paramount. Fountain Hughes talks about one of those controls, the pass system.
Now, I couldn't go from here across the street, or I couldn't go to nobody's house without I have a note or something from my master. And if I had that pass, that was what we call a pass. If I had that pass, I could go wherever he sent me, and I'd have to be back. Whoever he sent me to, they'd give me another pass, and I'd bring that back, so to show how long.
Even emancipation didn't truly free the slaves. Freedom freed slaves for more travail. The end of the Civil War found many cast adrift without skills and no place to go. And the Yankees who freed them weren't always seen as benevolent liberators.
I remember when the Yankees come along and took all the good horses and took sold all the meat and flour and sugar and stuff out in the river and let it go down the river. And they know the people wouldn't have nothing to live on, but they done that.
The ex-slaves left one hell for another, perhaps an even more dangerous one. No longer property, they didn't have the protections afforded property.
When we were slaves, we couldn't do that, see? And if we got free, we didn't know nothing to do. And my mother, she hunted places and bound us out for $1 a month, but we didn't have no property, we didn't have no home, we had nowhere, nothing, we didn't have nothing on it, just like the cattle, we just turned out and get along the best you.
I don't hide the other side of the folks, freedom. We didn't know. They just thought, was just feeding us, Them didn't know where to go. You see, after freedom broke, just like he turned something out, didn't know where to go. But just where to stay. Didn't know where to go. Turn us out just like, you turn out cattle.
In the narratives, the slaves used an interesting phrase for the end of slavery. They say, when the break came. Good times, easy times were not at hand. The trials for millions of black Americans didn't end in 1865. They continued. Laura Smalley and her family became sharecroppers. Harriet Smith's first husband was killed by whites during the Reconstruction, probably because of his political organizing. Fountain Hughes went north to Baltimore and worked at numerous jobs, including hauling manure. Not an enviable job, but it was the job of a free man.
Mrs. Goodall, at the ripe age of 102, you must have had some interesting experiences. Tell us one of them when you were a little girl.
Yes. Well, when I was a little girl in slave days, I always had something to do every day. Every day. I didn't have time to play very much at all. Because I myself was in the house for most of the time. In days like this, while we were outdoors, pulling up weeds or picking up feathers where the chickens would all make them through the yard, or every day. And in cloudy days, while we were in the house, we had a big pan of sand, silver sand in an old slipper, scrubbing up the floor in the big dining room where they ate the meal.
Mr. Haney, where did you live as a slave?
I was a slave all my life.
Where did you live?
I truly where I lived in Washington.
Where did you live before Washington?
Revelations 3:9-10. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. And here is the patience and faith of the saints.
Black people enjoyed being slaves. I think there were probably a good majority of black people who back then were born and raised as slaves, probably because that's the only thing they knew. It was the environment they grew up in. If they had a slave owner who treated them well, they probably enjoyed their lives, a few of them. I think it's illogical to believe that every person who was a slave back then hated their life. I truly think that's illogical.
White women as slave owners in the American South. White girls were trained in slave ownership, discipline, and mastery, sometimes from birth, even being given enslaved people as gifts when they were as young as 9 months. Slave-holding parents and
We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad, but we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart. Sure. Let's get down to what then do you want to call it. And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse.
Many years I was a racist. And I didn't like blacks. They used to call me N-word and whatnot. And I come a point and realize there's some personal experiences. The white people are racist. Not all of them. But white culture is. Our white country is. Our nation is. Our American culture is full of white supremacy. And we live in a white supremacist culture that caters to white people. Everything from the media to education to art to culture to politics is whitewashed. What is not whitewashed? As far as the status quo, as far as the dominant culture, everything's whitewashed. This country was built for white people. And it's time us Americans, us white Americans, came to terms with that and realized we're benefiting from that. We created slavery. We created a culture and a system of white supremacy that has benefited us for 400 years. You think maybe it's about time we stop being lazy as white people and take some fucking responsibility? Think outside of the fucking white box. Black people live it every fucking day. Brown people live it every fucking day. Think beyond your own fucking experience. Think beyond your own self. Imagine the privileges that you have just because of your fucking skin. I ain't saying you ain't suffered. We all suffer. Stop being defensive. What I'm saying is that we get certain privileges. We're not harassed by the police. Okay? We're not denied a house loan or denied to live in a neighborhood. We're not uncomfortable living in rural America. I'm not uncomfortable living in rural America, but I tell you what, a lot of black people don't even want to fucking drive through where I live. Why? Racist. We're fucking racist. So I'm not saying white people are bad. Stop being defensive. I'm saying take some fucking responsibility. All people are equal. God made us that way. Well, let's knock this fucking supremacy out of our fucking country. So I'm just saying, white America, wake up. Look in the fucking racial mirror and look at what we have done. Look at how we benefit. And let's do something about it. Let's speak up. Let's vote. Let's create legislation and policies to fight against this shit. Let's make things fair and equal. Let's take some responsibility and never, ever, ever ignore any form of racism that you see or experience or witness. Always speak up and act up. Please. Thank you.
Psalms 49:11. Their inward thoughts is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their land after their own names. Psalm 73:4-8. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain, violence cover them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness, they have more than their heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak lawfully. Isaiah 14:1-4. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord, for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, How hath the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased? The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers.